I was 5 minutes into the county archive when the lights gave a cautious hiccup and the microfilm reader spat out a page that didn't belong to any of the boxes I'd requested. The sheet was a roster with no names, just letters stacked like obedient soldiers. Group A, Group B, Group C. To the right of each was a column labeled Audio Regimen, and beside the title, a rubber stamp half-eaten by time, 1996. The boarding school that used to sit north of Duluth officially closed in 1998 for funding irregularities, a phrase that makes a crater sound like bookkeeping. I'd come for a tidy retrospective on missing persons rumors. What I had in my hands looked like a syllabus. The page carried note ghosts, erased pencil margins, chunks of erased lines where someone had pressed down hard. I angled the desk lamp and could just make out a penciled triangle, a /B/C, stacked with an arrow to a single word, compliance. Beneath it, see, Corr? The rest was rubbed to snow. Phone reception in the archive is a suggestion, not a promise, but the lobby had enough bars to line up interviews. Former students were strangely easy to book. They were cheerful on the phone, careful with their answers. They offered the same fond disclaimers. No, they'd never seen abuse. Yes, the staff were strict but fair. No, they hadn't kept in touch much. When I asked about anything like audio lessons or music periods, every one of them paused the same length of time, about the span of one slow breath, and said, "Our music period helped us focus." It wasn't the phrasing that bothered me. It was the rhythm, like a beat marked on paper that different hands agreed to read the same way. Claire agreed to meet the same afternoon. Minneapolis was a 2-hour drive south. I told myself a face-to-face would shake the stiffness out of their script. I packed my oldest portable recorder out of habit, partly because batteries never snoop, and pointed the car toward coffee and candor. She chose a cafe with plants and warm bulbs and an espresso machine loud enough to make me to check my levels twice. Claire looked like a kindergarten teacher in a catalog. Cardigan, tidy hair, a smile calibrated to forgive ahead of confession. She thanked me for driving. She thanked the barista for the mug. She thanked the chair when she pulled it out. We made small talk, and she laughed on the right beats. Then I asked about Group C. She folded her hands, looked once at the recorder and once at the door, and said, "We don't talk about C," as if reading from a card she'd practiced not to crease. "Why not?" I asked. A beat, not long, the length of a full inhale. "Because it was never about us," she said. "About who then?" She considered the question with the same kindness, as if she might tuck its hair behind its ear. "Loops," she said, as if the word could hold itself upright without more. We stayed at the table another 30 minutes. When I pressed on the school years, schedules, dorm floors, teachers' names, she was bright and organized, her memories uniform as fence posts. She described morning roll calls, chapel songs, check-ins after meals. Her grammar lost its contractions around the edges, tightening into something memorized. I changed the subject, and she loosened again, telling me about her job at a dental office and the neighbor's golden retriever who waited every day at 4:50 for the mailman. Before we stood, she drew a small diagram on a napkin, a rectangle divided into 3 horizontal bands. She labeled them A, B, C, and drew a single arrow downward to compliance. Under C, she wrote Corr and circled it once. "How did Group C differ?" I asked, casual. Her smile thinned. "It wasn't a group like the others," she said. "It was what you did when you were finished." She glanced again at the recorder. Please don't quote that. I promised to keep it off the record until I understood what I was looking at. She nodded as if we were both very reasonable people who had recognized each other in a crowd. We shook hands. Her palm was cool and dry and steady. Back in my hotel off the interstate, I lined the room with habits: deadbolt, chain, a chair under the knob because rituals are cheaper than weapons, laptop on the desk, notepad on the nightstand, recorder on the bedspread while I dug for the USB cable. It was dusk, that neglected color between blue and gray, and the TV played one of those cooking shows where the clock is more important than the food. I digitized the interview, scrubbed the levels to cut the espresso hiss, and almost missed it. A faint throb under Claire's voice, too regular to be air conditioning and too low to be the grinder. I soloed the frequency, 60 beats per minute, a metronome with a throat. I listened again, this time with headphones cupped hard over my ears. The hum didn't ride on top of her words, it underlined them, a pulse that made the spaces between syllables feel intentional. She paused for a breath before, "We don't talk about C," and for one choking second, I expected my own mouth to fill the gap with an answer I hadn't decided to give. I pulled the headphones off, and the room snapped back into itself. TV blue, carpet patterned by corporate sorrow, the refrigerator's small, persistent buzz buttressing the silence. I told myself I was primed to hear patterns. I told myself a lot of things. I set the recorder on the desk and went to brush my teeth. When I came back, the TV screen had gone black, the cable box blinking its small green stutter. I hadn't turned it off. The recorder sat right side up, centered on the desk blotter. I had left it on its back. I stood there, too long, toothbrush mint burning the back of my throat, and decided the cleaner had tidied it in a burst of industrious ghosting, even though no one had entered since I checked in. Sleep came like a decision I agreed to too quickly. I woke at 3:11 to the sound of nothing. No TV, no fridge, no interstate whisper. I knew because my brain tried to correct for the missing hum and couldn't find purchase. I lay there counting my own heartbeat until the refrigerator found itself and apologized in the only language it had. I got up, turned on every lamp, and told myself they could stay on if they wanted. Morning gave me an answer so simple it felt like news. Go to the building. There's a point at which you stop triangulating memory and put your feet where the thing happened. I checked out, dumped the coffee maker packet into a paper cup like a sinner bargaining with a weaker God, and drove north while the sky remembered how to be cold. The school sits at the edge of the woods, as if the trees had agreed to stop and the bricks had agreed to stand. The main building is a stack of apologetic red with bowed window boards and a rusted bell that couldn't call anyone to anything. The playground out front is the kind of stainless steel that still throws light like a blade even when the clouds promise nothing. A ladder up to a platform, a slide down to gravel, a swing with one chain twisted hard from years of unsupervised physics. The front door gave after a second shove, complaining down the hall. Inside, the smell was dry paper and bleached stone and the faint animal of old wood. I stood in the foyer and saw the bones of an institution that had practiced order. Hooks along the wall at child height, labels still taped above in the careful teacher hand, Owens, Patel, WK, Tommy, with the tape peeled away from a few like someone had come back and needed their name more than the wall did. I found the auditorium by following the carpet evolution. tile to runner to a burgundy bruise leading to double doors. The room opened like a throat. The seats were intact, the aisles clean of anything but dust. Velvet curtains hung heavy on their own history. Up in the back right, the glass booth for the projector and sound. My kind of altar. The booth door protested, then let me in with a sigh. The console was a museum of the last good year. Sliders, dials, a board with taped labels in black marker. Someone had written, "Do not touch," above a bank of switches and then smudged the knot into something gentler. On a lower shelf sat a carton of cassettes, spines out, handwriting consistent and tidy. Group A, Atienne. Group B, Calm. Group C, Corr. I picked up the last one. The plastic was warm. It was absurd. Rooms don't get warmer in their smallest objects, but I held the warmth anyway. The label had been rewritten over something erased. I tilted it, and the erased word flashed a ghost of itself. Closure? I slid the cassette into my old recorder with a familiarity that surprised me and pressed my thumb against the play button without pushing. I didn't press it. Not then. I came here to start a timeline, not a machine. The chapter in my head ended at the threshold. A reporter at the gate, a building holding its breath. I stood in the booth long enough to collect the hum of the room, the cool whisper through a vent, a single bee of electricity somewhere in the walls, and pictured Claire's neat diagram, the arrow from bands to a single word, compliance, Corr. The napkin was in my bag. I touched the edge of it like a talisman you don't quite admit you believe in. I took out my notebook and wrote what I knew in ink, not metaphor. Roster page 1996 audio regimen, identical pauses in phone interviews. Claire's phrase, "We don't talk about C," the way she looked at the recorder before she said it. The underhum on the tape, 60 beats per minute. The TV going dark. The recorder moved. I wrote down the smells and the seat count and the fact that the light through boarded windows makes cross hatches on a stage like a game of tic-tac-toe. No one will win. I wrote that I was alone. Then I rewound the tape to the start because the only honest way to test a story is to let it try to change you. I put on the headphones, sat on the stool in the booth, and took a breath that lasted exactly as long as it needed to. I pressed play. Hiss first, like opening a door into weather. Then the hum rose from the tape. 3 flat planes, stacked and almost polite, the way 3 radios might decide to agree. My headphones turned the auditorium into a throat. The top band steadied my inhale without asking. The bottom band made my tongue feel heavy and well-behaved. Between them, a thin seam flexed, and in that seam I kept thinking I heard consonants that weren't language, just the suggestion of a mouth already forming answers. I took one cup off my ear to prove the sound wasn't in the room. The room waited. The hum stayed inside the headphones, a private tide. I watched the stage through smudged glass and counted seats to distract myself. On the 3rd count, someone clapped once. I thought it was the building. Then Claire sat forward in the 3rd row, center aisle, hands together in her lap. Beside her, David with the barbered beard, and Marcus, shoulders straight like a student who knows the answer before the question. A few rows back, more bodies, adults in clean coats and quiet shoes, faces arranged in the small domestic way people wear when they're about to deliver bad news kindly. I hadn't heard the auditorium door open. The lobby had been empty. My phone had no service. The hum stayed steady in my right ear. "I didn't invite you," I said. It came out flatter than I meant. Claire tilted her head the way she had at the cafe, the smile that fits anywhere. "We come when we're called?" She nodded toward the recorder. "You pressed play?" I looked down at my thumb on the button as if it belonged to someone else's plan. It was still there, a child caught with an empty cookie jar. "What is Group C?" I asked, and heard myself choose the softer question, the one I'd meant to save. I didn't ask the other one because the napkin in my bag felt hot and stupid against my hip. They paused together. One breath, the exact length I'd measured in my interviews. Then, in voices that weren't rehearsed so much as timed, they said, "Closure." The word didn't fall like a verdict. It settled like a sheet. I slid the ear cup back in place, the better not to hear my own breathing. The middle band in the hum tightened, braid to knot. I thought of the erased pencil lines in the archive margins, how someone had tried to rub out the guidance and only made it paler, more permanent. I tried again. How did it work? Another breath's worth of silence, full and civil. "We don't talk about C." Claire's lips shaped it, but the tempo belonged to the tape. The hum told you where to leave room. I should have stopped there. Any decent reporter knows when a door is closed and when you're the one closing it on your fingers. Instead, I took off the headphones entirely and picked up the handheld mic I bring mostly for show. My thumb brushed the red light. I didn't need a transcript. I needed proof that the rhythm lived outside my head. "What did they do when someone said no?" I asked. In the moment it left my mouth, the room felt depressurized, as if the question had taken the oxygen for collateral. Another one-breath pause. Exact. Then every mouth opened on the same line, gently. "Non-compliance indicates need." Policy language, not a threat, not even a promise. A form. A draft sneaked under the booth door, enough to touch the hairs on my wrist. I looked at the handle. It hadn't moved. Down in the seats, Claire stood as if someone had called her name from a doorway, and she wanted to be sure she heard right. The others rose in the friendly, orderly way people stand for hymns. No one looked at anyone else. No one needed to. I backed away from the glass. The stool knocked the console. The tape clicked on its spools, patient. I stepped into the booth's corner and put my back against the wall like a person who trusts structure more than people. My palm left a damp mark on the paint. I told myself no one had broken anything yet. Claire took a step into the aisle. The others matched it without fall behind or hurry. A soft alignment, not drill. I let the booth door swing most of the way shut and turned the latch. It caught and didn't feel like enough, so I wiggled it until the metal complained. I set the recorder on the desk and watched the levels hop. I wanted sound if I couldn't have law. "Please stop," I said, and wasn't sure whether I meant them or the machine. Knuckles tapped the door once. Not pounding, permission. A woman's voice, maybe Claire, maybe not, said my full name, first and last, in a nurse's cadence. I hadn't given it in the cafe. I had given it on the phone 3 days earlier, inside a pause they left for me to fill. "We come when we're called," the voice said again, and the hum inside the headphones found the exact moment to end the sentence for her. Nothing from the door. From the tape, the soft scrape of leader passing ahead. Then the hum again, the middle band taking on a faint, serrated edge. I cued the reel back 5 seconds and listened to my own voice ask the forbidden question. I listened to their answer arrive like a train on time. I pressed my hand flat on the console because my fingers had started to tremble. a small, unphotographable truth. "Tell me what C does," I said louder, "for the recorder, for me," as if volume could matter here. One breath. "Closure." Something about the way they said it made the top of my mouth ache, the way too sweet makes enamel buzz. Closure of what? I wanted to ask, and the answer was already lining up in my throat like soldiers who know their cue. I swallowed hard. My tongue tasted like aluminum. I tried the window in the booth. It was a sliding panel meant for notes passed to the projector operator. It stuck, then gave with a rasp. Dust fell in a polite veil. The opening was just wide enough for a human mistake. I felt ridiculous and exactly right. I slid my bag through, then the notebook, then reached for the tape still spinning in my recorder. If I left it, I told myself, I could come back with a warrant or courage. If I took it, I would have something the world could occupy with me. Down below, the soft sound of shoes, repositioning. No rush. It was colder in the booth now. The draft had found me. I pressed stop, flipped eject, and the recorder paused as if deciding who I was to it. Then the door hissed open the last half inch and gave me the cassette like a concession. I pocketed the tape and slung the bag crosswise. The latch on the booth door shivered twice, held, then smiled its little metal smile and stayed. I don't know how else to say it. It felt like a courtesy offered and rescinded. "I'm leaving," I said, because saying it out loud gave the sentence weight. From the aisle, "Loops," Claire said, and the word did a small trick in the room, a handkerchief pulled through a ring. "I'm not part of your loop," I said, and the recorder caught the lie in the rasp of the P. The back stairs were a narrow apology corkscrewing down behind the booth. I took them sideways, counting each squeak like a prayer bead. On the landing, I stopped and listened. No chase, no whisper, only the building settling around its own breath. The exit to the alley stuck, and then exhaled me into thin daylight, where the sky had that winter brightness that makes everything look newly printed. In the shadow of the dumpster, I checked my pockets like a thief and found the tape where I'd hidden it. I held it in my palm and felt, absurdly, its warmth. I told myself heat transfer is not a metaphor. I told myself I know the difference. I walked the long way to the car, keeping my eyes on the cracked asphalt so I wouldn't be made to see anyone I couldn't unsee. The key fob's cheerful chirp sounded like a taunt. Inside, I locked the doors and put the tape on the passenger seat, buckled it in because ritual is cheaper than belief. I started the engine. The radio came on mid-ad and then slipped to dead air. I turned it off and listened to the heater fan learn its own rhythm. At the bottom of the drive, I looked back at the brick and the boarded windows and the stainless slide throwing a shard of sun across the gravel. The front doors were closed. The auditorium kept its secrets like a professional. For the first time since I pressed play, I felt alone. I drove south until the woods thinned and cell service returned in bars tall enough to tempt. I didn't call anyone. I didn't want to put my voice into any line that could start echoing. At a rest stop, I washed my hands until the water ran cold and then watched a child in a red hat jump the same crack in the sidewalk over and over, a loop that made his mother laugh softly each time. Back in the car, I balanced the cassette on my knee and wrote the facts in my notebook. Not the fear, not yet. Playback conducted in auditorium booth. Presence of former students, adults. Without observed entry. Identical pause length preceding identical answers. Phrases captured closure. Non-compliance indicates need. clear statement. We come when we're called. I circled called until the paper thinned, then flipped the page because I didn't like the soft popping sound the pen made when it broke through. I told myself I would not listen again till I was home, where walls I paid for could fail me or not on my terms. I told myself the hum would be easier to parse away from the dilapidated romance of a closed school. I told myself I could step out of a pattern just by naming it. At a gas station near Hinckley, I bought batteries I didn't need and coffee that tasted like metal and told the cashier I liked her earrings because compliments make a pocket of air in a day. She touched one without thinking and said thank you in a rhythm that felt like hers. I drove the rest of the way with the tape buckled in next to me, the heater keeping us both from figuring out whose warmth was whose. When the skyline finally shouldered up, I felt relief come on like a fever breaking. Home is a container, I thought. Containers hold. At the third floor walk up above the florist, I set the recorder on the table and the cassette beside it, as far apart as I could without making it obvious. I washed my face, answered 2 emails that asked nothing of me, and made a show of eating half a sandwich. I moved the chair from the bedroom to the front door because superstition is just a shape left by a story that got away from its author. When the apartment was arranged into the idea of safety, I sat down across from the tape and let the 2 halves of the day meet in the middle. I could feel the exact length of the pause lodged behind my teeth, like a seed hull. I didn't press play, not yet. The florist downstairs closes at 9, which means the hallway smells like cool water and crushed stems until midnight, and then gives up to dust. I locked my door, set the chair under the knob again, because I am consistent if not brave, and made the apartment cooperate with the idea of safety. Lamp on. TV, murmuring a cooking show no one wins. Window latched, recorder and cassette on the table turned away from each other like guests from feuding families. I put my notebook between them so they'd have to speak through me. I could feel the length of the pause sitting behind my teeth like a seed I couldn't spit out. At 12:41, the upstairs neighbor practiced a tender 3-note scale on a piano he doesn't own. At 1:03, the garbage truck announced itself like a god with a sore throat and took what it wanted. At 1:58, the city thinned to air and a single siren in some other version of this night. At 2 o'clock, the refrigerator hummed, and I could stand the pretense of being alone no longer. I put the cassette into the recorder and pressed play. The hum entered the room the way a tide enters a harbor, not with force, but with certainty. 3 bands again, stacked in their careful order. Top band smoothing my inhale, bottom band weighing my tongue, middle band stitching the space between words so that each silence held its shape. In the auditorium, it had felt like company. In my kitchen, it felt like a decision. The first 90 seconds were hiss and low weather. Then my own voice, thinner than I remember it, asked the wrong question, the one I'd promised to save and couldn't. What did they do when someone said no? A breath-length silence followed, and then the chorus of answers back in that empty school, arriving on time like well-trained trains. Non-compliance indicates need. Hearing it here made something in my chest decide to stand very still. I stopped the tape. The apartment lurched back to itself. Radiator tick. The neighbor's faucet coughing itself to bed. The outside world unbothered by my very private mistake. The cassette spindles coasted to a halt, like a heart caught thinking about it. I stared at the recorder until the plastic refused to give up a new shape. "I will not do this again," I said to the empty room, and regretted saying it out loud because my voice landed in the same shape as all the others, a sentence with a door already built into it. I turned the tape back on. This time, I listened for the seams. They were everywhere, more obvious now that I knew to look. The hum carving out crescents of silence where responses could settle. The program didn't tell anyone what to say. It taught the mouth when to wait. It taught the room to hold space exactly long enough for an answer to arrive. Any answer with the right gate. My phone lit on the table, face down. The screen glowed and dimmed 3 times. Unknown numbers, no sound. On the 4th glow, a notification popped that I didn't know my phone could make without me. Recording in progress. The microphone icon pulsed in time with the hum. I put the phone in the freezer because that is a thing a grown woman who documents facts did at 2:07 a.m. And I cannot defend it except to say that cold is honest. It tells you where you are. I scrubbed the tape and found the tight braid in the middle band, the one that made my molars hum like tuning forks. I pressed a fingertip to the point on the wheel where the spools turn into blur. I whispered to no one and to every tape I'd ever made, "Stop." I paused one breath long and then heard myself say, "We come when we're called." It didn't feel like compulsion. It felt like the most natural next step of a sentence I must have started hours ago. The doorbell rang once. Not a buzz, not a chime. A small, respectful sound meant for polite houses. I sat so still I heard my own eyelashes think. The chair under the knob made a faint wooden complaint. I didn't move. The bell rang again, held a fraction longer, the way a tired hand rests on a task it means to finish. I texted the florist downstairs, "If you hear a bell, don't open," and watched the sending circle until it failed gracefully. The phone in the freezer lit the frost with a pale aquarium glow. "Please stop," I said, into the room, into the recorder, into the seam between hums. I wasn't sure which of us I meant. From the hallway, my full name, first and last, spoken with the kind of cadence nurses use when they want you to breathe through pain. Claire's voice carried like steam under a bathroom door. "We come when we're called. I'm not calling you." The words sounded like teeth clicking. The tape didn't care about the words. It cared about the space between them. I took the cassette out because superstition offers you a button even when science won't. The room kept humming for a second you could argue with and then chose not to. I put the tape in my pocket and the recorder on the floor and pressed rec because if I have a church, it's the possibility that proof might change a temperature in the world. I dragged the chair from the door and set my palm on the cold brass. The knob was still. So was I. I opened it. They didn't push past me. They moved like considerate people entering a small space, apologizing with their shoulders, adjusting their feet so as not to touch anything uninvited. David, barbered beard precise. Marcus, careful posture softening at the edges as if to say he knew this was unpleasant and would be over soon. A woman I'd spoken to only on the phone whose name I'd written twice with 2 different spellings in my notebook. And Claire, in her cardigan, the kind of smile that forgives before there is anything to forgive. "We're sorry to come so late," she said, and meant it. "How did you—" I started, then heard the trap in the grammar and shut my mouth on my own fingers. Loops, Claire said gently, as though reminding me of something we'd agreed on earlier. Her eyes moved to the recorder on the floor, the little red light faithfully eating the room. "May I?" she asked, as if it were cutlery left in the wrong drawer. "No," I said, and felt the truth of it, the small defiance, the child of what if in me still alive. One breath. "Non-compliance indicates need," they said, and I hated how soft it sounded here, in a kitchen with a dented trash can and a towel I forgot to wash, how domestic policy can be when it learns please and thank you. "What is Group C?" I asked, because my mouth wouldn't let me leave the sentence unbuilt. 4. One breath. Closure? I thought of the auditorium, the velvet, the booth window that gave like a book's first page. I thought of the napkin diagram and the arrow that did not bend. I thought of the erased word under C, the ghost I tilted into light. Corr, closure. I thought of files with names peeled off and hooks at child height. I thought of the pause exactly as long as a human breath and how many ways a body learns to hold it. "You don't have to," I said, and hated that I made it a suggestion. "We don't," Claire said. "We finish." She stepped around me and reached up to my smoke detector, the little white coin in the center of the ceiling that shouts into your life when you've done nothing but burn toast. She twisted it free with a polite click. The apartment exhaled a tiny relief. Someone else turned off the TV with the remote I could not remember leaving on the counter. The refrigerator recognized the room's new tone and quieted, as if in sympathy. The hum that had threaded through everything all night became the only rhythm left. "Please," I said, and this time I knew exactly whom I meant. I put my hand over the pocket where the tape warmed my thigh through the fabric. It was a stupid human motion, as if I were guarding a heart in the wrong place. Claire didn't reach for me. None of them did. That would have been easier to hate. Kindness is worse. It always takes longer. "I will keep your name out of it," I said. "I can write around you. You already did," Claire said, not unkindly. "In the booth? In the kitchen? We're just here to—" She searched for a word and found the one they'd been trained to make soft. "Close." Behind them, the hallway watched without blinking. Somewhere below us, the florist's walk-in cooler chuffed, and for an instant, I pictured the lilies and the chrysanthemums sleeping in their small cold, all that quiet color waiting for a morning I was not going to see. "Let me leave a note," I said. "Let me—" One breath. They didn't say the line this time. They didn't need to. Some lessons you only have to hear once. "Let me record," I tried, and pointed at the device on the floor like an idiot pointing at a book in a burning house. "So someone knows. So it isn't just—" Claire crouched, and with 2 fingers, tilted the recorder so the microphone faced me better. "They'll know," she said. "You've been clear." I laughed, because my body found one last wrong thing to do. It broke halfway through and turned into something that made everyone's faces soften with professional sorrow. "What did they do when someone said no?" I asked, and heard in my own voice the exact place where the program wanted the answer to land. I could have kept my mouth shut. I didn't. Habit is a loop too. They took one breath together like polite swimmers at the edge of a pool, and then the room did what it had been trained to do. If anyone ever listens to the tape that stayed on my kitchen floor, they will hear shoes adjusting to kindness. They will hear my full name spoken like an apology. They will hear a chair moving back, a smoke detector removed, the small civic noises of a room being readied for a quiet thing. They will hear me try to hold a sentence closed with my teeth and fail. They will hear the pause. They will hear the last word that belonged to me. After that,